Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk 716 Sports. Tonight, my guest is Steve. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good, Robby. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Excited to talk some Sabres and some NHL hockey with you.
Who will win the Stanley Cup Playoffs in 2020?
Yeah. So I knew this question was coming. It's definitely probably the hardest question because this year's just so different. And, teams have had time off. It's just there's no way to predict it. So my strongest feeling right now, and it pains me to say, is my pick would be the Boston Bruins. I actually have a strong feeling we might see a finals rematch from last year. Because in my mind, Boston's the strongest team in the East. St. Louis is the strongest in the West. But I see Boston winning out because Boston, in my mind, right now is just the most balanced team, top to bottom. They have the best line in the NHL with Pasternak, Bergeron, and Marchand. They have a loaded defense. Chara's getting up there, but they have Carlo, all those guys. Rask is still a very capable goalie. There's plenty of other teams that could challenge, but I think the road to the Stanley Cup, at least through the Eastern Conference, goes through Boston.
I like Carolina and the Rangers, so I'm gonna say maybe Carolina will make it to the conference final against Boston, and then Boston will win that series.
Carolina is a very good team. Right now, tonight, they're on the verge of eliminating the Rangers already in 3 games. The main thing that scares me with them is their goaltending. It's just been so inconsistent. It just really worries me if they can make a long run. But I do like them. They're a young team. They're a well-run team. Yeah. They East, like I said, I think everything goes through Boston, but the East is kind of really wide open. There's Boston. Right now, the Toronto and Blue Jacket series is really interesting. You have possibly the greatest collection of young talent in the NHL in Toronto, but they're real front heavy. They're great at forward. They're not so great on defense. They have a great goalie in Frederik Andersen, but you have a Blue Jackets team that's just so great on defense and so greatly coached by John Tortorella, and they've gotten such great goaltending out of both Merlikins and Korpisalo. They really could challenge anybody in the East.
My all-time favorite player, Rod Brind'Amour, he's the coach of Carolina. And then I like this guy, Sebastian Aho, who wears number 20 on Carolina.
Yeah.
In their last game, Carolina, I think he scored a goal. And I think he's one of the good players on their team.
Yeah. No, definitely. Aho, you just saw Aho get one of the first offer sheets since Ryan O'Reilly, I don't know, what was that, 8 years ago? He's definitely a top young player. Svechnikov is really amazing too. I believe he just had a hat trick in their last game yesterday. So yeah, they're definitely like I said, they're a good young team. The only thing I think that could keep them from going on an extended run right now is their goaltending. But if they can put that together, they're just as dangerous as any team in the East.
They got the old Toronto goaltender.
Yeah. James Reimer, yeah. He actually hasn't been awful, but he just doesn't match up like some of the goalies in the East they'll be facing, like Anderson or Rask or the two Columbus goaltenders I mentioned earlier.
How long have you been like blogging for on the Warpath?
Okay, so I first started blogging, writing about the Sabres in September of 2014. If you remember, that was back. That was the just prior to the season before Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel got drafted, and that was when all the Sabres fans were. Everyone was wanting to tank for McDavid, tank for McEichel, and I at the time was living in Ohio. I kind of felt disconnected from a lot of my friends and family at the time. I was going through some personal stuff, and the one thing that really was a distraction for me, the hockey team, it was just bad. The Sabres were just bad. So and all the talk from a lot of the fans was, oh, let's root against the team because we want Connor McDavid, which I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm the first person. I love Jack Eichel. He's a tremendous player. If you ask me if the tank worked because they got Jack Eichel. And you just don't players like that just don't grow on trees. You just don't come across a player like that. But I just personally, I'm opposed to the idea of actively rooting for my team to lose. It just kind of eats at me, you know. And so I would go online and I'd go on WGR. I'd pull up Buffalo radio. I'd pull up stuff from the Buffalo News, and all anyone was talking about is, oh, the Sabres are going to throw the season away. All the fans just want the team to lose. And you know what? It was kind of like upsetting for me. And like, I didn't have anyone around in Ohio to talk Sabres with. So you know what? I started a blog. Just to kind of vent and is a creative outlet. That was called Thoughts from Saberland. Saberland. It was my first website in 2014. It's what initially brought me to Twitter. Just trying to promote the website and stuff, and ran that site for a couple of years. Through the tank, I got some good articles in there. Then after Eichel was drafted, I moved back home to New York. I ended up moving to Rochester, and after the tank, I just didn't have the same like fire and anger, and also I was trying to kind of fix things in my personal life, put that back together. So got a little distracted, and I kind of let the blog go by the wayside. I'd write like something every couple months, and there came to be a period of time where I didn't log in to for like 6 months. And what happened is I then went back to log into my site in the sports blog service that I used to host that. They had in the meantime like completely like changed how they did their logins and like revamped the whole site. So when I went back, like I said, it was at least like 6 months. I was basically unable to log in and retrieve my account. And basically my whole website was lost. So that kind of put the blog thing on that was maybe 2016. So that kind of put the blog thing on the shelf for a while. I stayed active on Twitter. I always love to talk Sabres hockey on Twitter, but yeah, I just kind of shelved the website, and I meant to get it relaunched, and I just, you know, had a hard time with the motivation after losing all that I worked so hard on. But also, I really wanted to rebrand because Thoughts for Sabres Land doesn't really fit in a Twitter handle, which I didn't think of when I originally named the website. But so yeah, my Twitter handle was like TFSL Sports Talk, later TFSL Hockey Talk, and it's like nobody knows what the heck that stands for. So I relaunched the blog. I believe it was 2018, roughly at the time of the Sabres 10-game winning streak, the now infamous 10-game winning streak. And I decided to use the old chant from the odd on the warpath because I figured it accurately represented how I felt about the Sabres. My passion, anger, all the different emotions that they elicit from me. So I've been running this new site since about November 2018. I was doing a lot of content at first. The last year or so, it's been a little slower just because I have had a newborn son in April of 2019. So having a little one running around the house sometimes makes it a little hard to sit down and write. But I have enjoyed getting back into writing a little bit and interacting more on Twitter with Sabres stuff.
Where can people find you?
Oh yes, so you can find me on Twitter at on the Warpath Buff. My website is just Sabres on the Warpath, all one word, .com.
Do you think Kevin Adams was the right choice for GM?
See, now that's a tough question because so I honestly don't know if he's the right choice. That's something we're gonna find out. He's the right choice if he's the guy that can get the Sabres over the hump, make them competitive, get them back in the playoffs. I really like. I was very skeptical when they hired him. I really like some of the first moves he's made. I like that he's trying to gear the team more towards analytics and a stat-based approach to make smarter roster decisions. Hopefully not make as many mistakes with signings and draft picks and that kind of thing. The thing I didn't like about the hiring is even if he turns out to be the right pick, the process was wrong. And I think it was Brian Burke on Sportsnet who said just that the process was wrong. Because here's a guy in Kevin Adams, by all accounts a good guy. I mean, he played in the league for several years. He's from Clarence, New York. He's from my hometown. But he never had worked as a NHL GM before. He'd never even worked as an assistant general manager in the NHL before, or in the AHL. He had zero experience, and the Pagulas gave him the job because they know and trust him. But to me, that just doesn't really qualify him necessarily. You know, so yeah, like I said, it doesn't really qualify him because they didn't interview anybody. There's good options out there. Mike Gillis, the former Vancouver Canucks GM, he's out there. I mean, he's apparently looking for something with president in the title, but I would gladly have welcomed him here as a president of hockey operations, a role, by the way, the Pools don't want to fill, even though they have an inexperienced GM in Kevin Adams. But it's like they didn't interview anybody. They just handed this guy a job. And it's like he could be great, but it's just like it's like you're the owner of like a fancy restaurant and you have to fire your chef. He's doing something wrong, or he quits on you. So your chef is gone, and you go to this guy and Kevin Adams, who's been working on the business side of the Sabres. It's like you go to the head waiter. Hey, you're a home cook. You know a little bit about the kitchen. You're the new head chef. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to say he can't work out, but you'd think there'd be some kind of interview process. Bring other guys in, interview them. Back to the chef metaphor, like you'd want to taste his food, you'd want to taste other chefs' food. It's like, even if they get this right, the way they hired him just kind of still aggravates me because basically, if he does turn out to be the GM the Sabres need, they got there by lucking into it, which really concerns me if the Pagulas are going to want to still be involved in the management of the hockey team, is that's how they make their decisions. Their decision-making process just isn't one that's really, it's not real enlightened. It's just about who they know and trust, not about who can do the job the best, in my mind.
I heard there was someone from Arizona that was like looking to come here to Buffalo or something.
So John Shea, he's the former GM of the Arizona Coyotes. He apparently was offered a job by a different team. Originally, some people rumored to be the Sabres. We're now pretty sure it wasn't the Sabres. Most opinions seem to say it was the New Jersey Devils. The gist of it is he asked permission to interview for the job. It's believed to be a position above NHL GM. It actually sounded like a job where he'd be working with multiple teams, which with New Jersey makes sense. The Devils ownership also owns, they own the Philadelphia 76ers. I believe they're part of a group that's bidding to buy the New York Mets. I believe they might own part of a soccer team. I'm not really sure on that, but anyway, so he interviewed for the job and wanted to take it, and Arizona was upset, even though they gave him permission to interview for it. because it was their understanding that it wasn't a hockey job, but there somehow was still hockey operations involved in it. It's a whole mess. The Coyotes have asked Commissioner Bettman to weigh in on it to decide basically if he can go, which he already quit from the Coyotes over this whole thing. So yeah, very unlikely he would come to the Sabres. But one person to keep an eye out for, his sister actually, Megan Shea, co-founded the analytics company. I'm blanking on the name off the top of my head, but they co-founders of a company. That's how he got his start before being hired by Arizona. They're both very smart, but Megan Shea is probably one of the smartest people in hockey that's not employed by a team. And I think the Sabres, and I don't even know if she'd be willing to work for a team, but if I'm the Sabres and I'm looking to upgrade my analytics department, I'm absolutely talking to her. Basically, I'd offer her as much money as she wants within reason to come work for the Sabres, because I mean, there's no way adding another analytical mind is going to hurt, especially in today's age where stats are only going to become more and more part of the game. Whenever player tracking comes out in the next year or two, there's just going to be so many more numbers and so much more raw data. And having smart people in the organization that can sift through that and know how to interpret it is only going to benefit teams like the Sabres. And not having people that can utilize that data is going to set them further behind the curve of the other teams that are ready for that next jump in analytics.
Who is your favorite player currently on the Sabres?
Okay, so I kind of wanted to avoid the boring answer in Eichel, but I was thinking about it. Like, every player I like either ends up leaving or like they're on the way out. Lawrence Pilot, Evan Rodriguez, Johan Larson is most likely out after this season. Jason Pominville, they didn't re-sign. So I'm going to say Jack Eichel just because he's not going anywhere. So I feel confident me calling him my favorite player isn't going to curse him and send him out of here. But in all seriousness, he's just, I mean, he's obviously the best player on the team. He's the most exciting to watch. And they'd be pretty stinking awful. I mean, they're not great, but they'd be pretty stinking awful without Jack Eichel. And for my money, he's for the 3-on-3 overtime, he's the best 3-on-3 player in the game. I love watching him in overtime. He's just with the increased space in overtime, he's just a monster. He's got that speed, he's got that big body, he can control the puck, and he's just got the vision and patience. And if you can just watch him on some of his overtime goals, when he goes back behind the Sabres' own net and he just waits and watches, he's just waiting for that opening. And then you see him take off and he just skates through everyone, around everyone, and goes in for the goal or slides it over to whoever's on his wing for the tap in, and he's just a magician.
Well, if I had to pick one, it'd be Jeff Skinner, because
Yes,
he was with Carolina for a while too, and then he came over to Buffalo, and and I've liked him ever since he was with Carolina.
Yeah, he's always been a great player. Great goal scorer. He's not much of a play driver, which is what's got kind of gotten him in trouble this year. He got that big contract, and then they put him on a line without Jack Eichel and without any center who really can get him the puck. He's not a guy who's gonna carry the puck the length of the ice and create his own scoring chances. But he's a guy, if you get him the puck in those prime scoring areas, he's going to rip it home.
Like
And I think that's why his numbers dipped this year.
like if they put him with Eichel or Olofsson,
Mm-hmm.
he would have maybe got like to 30 or 40 goals.
I mean, he was at 40 last year with missing time. I think with a full season with Eichel without getting hurt, I think he could get close to 50 goals. But I understand why they don't want Skinner, Eichel, and Reinhart on one line because it puts all your eggs in one basket. It puts all your talent on one line and no other line can score. I would say though, um, is I think Skinner needs Eichel more than Reinhart does, but I'd also say I think Olofsson needs Eichel more than Skinner does. I would put um, I would put Skinner on the same line as Reinhart because Reinhart can drive play from the wing, and I think the two of them, I think they would feed well off each other, even without Eichel, even if they don't have a legit number two center, even with Marcus Johansson. The other thing you could really do now, I am not trying to suggest Johan Larsson is a second line center. He's not. If he's your second best center, which he pretty much has been the last year or two since Ryan O'Reilly got traded, if he's your second best center, you're probably not doing much, and the Sabres haven't. But if he's your third or fourth best center, you're probably in pretty good shape. But Larson, in a very small amount of time, I think they played together for like 2 or 3 games, maybe less than 30 minutes total. He was on a line with Skinner, and they had good numbers. Their underlying numbers were really good, but they also, I think they scored a few goals in that short time. And like Johan Larsson, people think of him as a fourth line center, but his game it just meshes really well with Skinner's because Skinner's a guy who needs you to get him the puck in the right area, and he's got the ability to score. Johan Larsson is a guy who he's really good defensively, which helps because Skinner's not the best defender. But he also what he does really well is he holds onto the puck. He's a great possession player, and he just passes well, and he just cycles the puck around and just maintains possession. He gets the puck to where it needs to go. His offensive numbers aren't great because he doesn't have the ability to finish like Skinner does, and he usually doesn't play with great finishers. But if you put a guy who can't finish but moves the puck really well with a guy who doesn't move the puck as well, doesn't see that part of the game as well, but can really finish on his opportunities. I mean, that's a match made in heaven, and I was kind of disappointed that Kruger didn't give that more of a chance because I think it would have surprised a lot of people how well Skinner and Larson would have worked together.
Do you like the format the NHL is using this year for the playoffs?
So that question is another one that's kind of tricky for me. I do so for this year. This year's weird. I mean, we took 4 months off in the middle of the season. I mean, you're in the middle of a global pandemic. They're in bubbles. I mean, this playoff format's weird, but you know what? It works. I mean, it was never going to please everybody. Yeah, I'm kind of upset that the Sabres didn't get in it, but at the same time, if they get in it, maybe they don't fire Jason Botterill, which I think, even if I'm not sold on Kevin Adams, I think he's an upgrade over Jason Botterill. So you know, I'm not complaining about that. They had to do something. They had to come up with some format. They weren't going to do all 30 teams. 24 teams. You know, it seems right. I mean, these playoff series I haven't watched a lot because I've been working and visiting family this weekend. But I mean, the games have looked pretty fun. The round robin is kind of an interesting idea. I mean, it's a cool little experiment. But if you were asking me, would I like to see the NHL like continue this format after this year? Absolutely not. I wouldn't want them long term to expand the playoffs past 16 teams because it really just kind of devalues the regular season. I mean, what's the point in playing a regular season, 82 game regular season, if 2/3 of the league is going to make it into the playoffs? Just go right to the playoffs. Like, you could do a 30 game round robin and then just use that for seeding and then just put 24 teams in the playoffs then. Like, don't really have a long regular season. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't like the current the playoff format where it's within the division. I think they were trying to force rivalries that way, and it's just kind of unfair, you know, because like some of these teams. Now, I have no love for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I mean, like, you gotta almost feel bad for them. It's like they gotta play Boston like every year in the first round, and they can't get past them in that divisional format. And it's like, in that divisional format, you always play the same teams. I ideally would like them to go back to the conference one versus 8 format, because you get a little more variety. The one like crazy idea I've had, which I don't think they would ever go back to, is I would like to see the NHL do a 16-team playoff, but throw the conferences out the window for the playoff and just do 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, and just do the playoffs that way. I mean, you get crazy, interesting playoff matchups. You could get teams in the same division in the Stanley Cup final. Like, how crazy would it be to someday have a like Buffalo Toronto, or Toronto Montreal, Detroit and Chicago, like Stanley Cup final? Like, you get these. Well, you could have Detroit and Chicago because they're in different conferences now, but like these division rivals, like, I think something like that would be kind of cool. But yeah, so yeah, so this year's playoff format definitely interesting. I'm definitely interested to see how the round robin teams, Boston, Tampa, Philly, who else was it?
Vegas.
Colorado, Vegas, all of them, how they fare in their first round matchups after they've been playing in round robin games and these other teams just played a best of 5 series. You would think that the other teams would be playing a little bit of higher level in the playoff series. Maybe Boston or Tampa have a little rust in them, more rust in them than a team like Carolina or Columbus or someone like that. So it will be interesting to see. It's definitely an interesting year, and whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year definitely deserves it and has earned it. But I wouldn't want to see them do something like this long term.
How did you meet Ron?
We met on Twitter. It's been a while. I think it was like just before I rebranded to On the Warpath. He followed me, or I followed him, and we just started getting in arguments on Twitter. I mean, Ron is Ron can really argue a point, and I'm pretty stubborn and passionate myself. So yeah, we've had more than our fair share lively Twitter debates. Few times people have told, at least on a few occasions, some people have said that me and him like almost fight like a married couple. Interesting, but yeah, I've gotten all through Twitter online, but gotten to know him pretty well, and he's a really cool guy. Really nice guy. I know, like I said, he likes to really argue his point on Twitter, but he's at the end of the day, he is a really good guy.
Yeah, I've never had that with Ron.
Oh, I have to tell him he'll have to initiate you.
Yeah, I've seen some of his posts, but I don't understand hockey like he does. So I just have to ask him to teach me and stuff like that. So I kind of learn it and all that, and then maybe he can show me the ropes.
Yeah.
On how to do some of this stuff and that. Talking about different teams and stuff like that too. Thank you for watching this edition of Let's Talk 716 Sports, and my guest tonight was Steven from On the Warpath.
All right. Thanks for having me on.